Good morning, and welcome to the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I am Doug Owens, President and CEO of the Lone Star Flight Museum, where we believe aviation inspires achievement and endless possibilities. The Hall of Fame absolutely embodies the spirit of that belief, and we are proud to be its home. As you know, our traditional luncheon and induction ceremony in 2020 was first delayed and then canceled as a result of the pandemic. This virtual event today is acknowledgement that we are not back to normal yet, but we are certainly trending that way, and we are excited for the future. With a very difficult year behind us and a welcomed recovery on the way, it is time for us to formally recognize the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame class of 2020. This year, we will not induct additional 2021 members because it is important to us that we do recognize the 2020 inductees and allow them their full measure of honor and recognition. The Hall of Fame was established in 1995 through a resolution by the Texas legislature and signed by then Governor George W. Bush. The Hall of Fame exists to celebrate Texas's rich aviation heritage and recognizes and honors those Texans who turned inspiration into feats of daring, leadership, and marvelous achievement. They defended and led our nation. They broke down barriers and led the way into space. They were leaders of industry and innovation that changed the very way we live. They represent all those who believed in the endless possibilities of flight. Each of the inductees, through their deeds or accomplishments, serves as an inspiration to our young people today toward lives of purpose and promise. Sadly, since our last ceremony in 2019, we lost 3 members of the Hall of Fame. I'd like to take a moment to remember them on this special day, and they are Christopher Kraft, Azalea White, and Sam Johnson. The Hall of Fame currently lists 80 members, represented in 4 categories: trailblazers and explorers, military aviators, innovators and entrepreneurs, and leaders. The Hall of Fame members are selected by the museum's board of directors following recommendations from a distinguished panel of aviation historians, writers, and experts. Today we will induct 2020 members George Abbey, Colonel Eileen Collins, Tyson Weiss, and Usto Schultz. They are a prestigious group of individuals, and we are very proud to share this moment with you. We thank you for joining us today and honoring the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame class of 2020.
Hello, I'm Scott Rozelle, Chairman of the Board of the Lone Star Flight Museum. Like General Owens, I'm proud to be part of today's ceremony and to introduce you to the 4 new inductees to the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame. Each of these individuals has made a significant contribution to the advancement of aviation in our state, in our nation, in the world, and at least in 2 cases, out of this world. Each is a Texan, either by birth or by residence. Today they join a remarkable group of trailblazers and explorers, military aviators, innovators and entrepreneurs, and leaders in the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you the members of the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame class of 2020.
While relatively few outside the space program know his name, George Abbey is one of the most influential figures in the history of American spaceflight. Working behind the scenes, he's been involved in every space project from Apollo through the International Space Station. George Abbey was born in Seattle and attended the Naval Academy at Annapolis. After graduating in 1954, he elected to be commissioned into the Air Force so that he could enter flight training without having to go through a year of sea duty first. Abbey received his primary training at Hondo Air Force Base and his basic training at Webb Air Force Base before training to fly helicopters at Edward Gray Air Force Base in San Marcos. After several years as a helicopter instructor, he attended the Air Force Institute of Technology, earning a master's degree in electrical engineering and an assignment to the Dinosaur project at Boeing. After that program was canceled, Abbey was assigned to work with NASA in Houston. Heavily involved with the design of the Apollo spacecraft, Abbey was part of the investigation of the Apollo 1 fire, before leaving the Air Force in 1967 to work for NASA as the assistant to George Low, manager of the Apollo spacecraft program office. In 1976, Abbey was promoted to Director of Flight Operations, where he directed all flight crew and flight control activities for the Space Shuttle program. Then in 1983, he was named Director of the Flight Crew Directorate, where he was responsible for selecting shuttle crews. In this position, he ensured that women and minorities would be a part of astronaut corps. Appointed Deputy Associated Administrator for Spaceflight in 1988, Abbey moved to NASA headquarters and became part of the team that defined the strategy for missions to the Moon and Mars. As Senior Director of Space Policy for President Bush, he developed America's space station program and envisioned opportunities to work with Russia. Abbey returned to Houston in 1994 as Deputy Director of the Johnson Space Center and was promoted to Center Director in 1996, overseeing 15,000 NASA employees and contractors. For the next 7 years, he was involved with the management of the Shuttle Mir program and the building of the International Space Station. In 2001, Abbey began working with the Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. Retiring from NASA in 2003, he became a senior fellow in space policy at the Baker Institute. He's been awarded numerous honors, including a Presidential Medal of Freedom, the NASA Exceptional Service Medal, the NASA Outstanding Leadership Medal, 3 Distinguished Service Medals, and the Robert R. Gilruth Award for his accomplishments in human spaceflight. It is with great honor that we induct George Abbey into the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame.
If I was successful at all in my endeavors in space and aviation, it was because I had some great mentors. My mentors in space were George Lowe and Bob Gilruth, Chris Kraft and Max Faget, and I had some equally great mentors in my aviation career, all veterans of World War II and all members of the greatest generation. And I also had great people that I worked with and great people working for me. And one of those individuals is being inducted into the Hall of Fame along with me, Eileen Collins, and very deservingly. So I very humbly accept this award on not only my behalf, but on the behalf of all those people that made my career what it is and made my endeavor successful. So thank you very much.
A native of Elmira, New York, and longtime Texan, Eileen Collins began her journey to space by earning an associate's degree in math and science from Corning Community College, before earning a BA in mathematics and economics from Syracuse University in 1978. At the same time, she worked a variety of part-time jobs to pay for flying lessons. With dreams of flying high-performance aircraft, she entered the U.S. Air Force and was selected for undergraduate pilot training at Vance Air Force Base. She earned her wings in 1979 and remained at Vance as an instructor for another 3 years, before becoming a C-141 Starlifter pilot and instructor pilot. In 1983, Collins flew missions as a part of the U.S. invasion of Grenada, delivering troops and supplies to the island nation. She next served at the Air Force Academy from 1986 to 1989, where she was a flight instructor in the T-41 and a professor of mathematics. During this period, she also earned a master's degree in operations research from Stanford and a master's degree in space systems management from Webster University. In 1990, Collins became only the second female pilot to graduate from the Air Force Test Pilot School, shortly before she was selected to be an astronaut by NASA. Her flight into space on 1995's mission STS-63 aboard the Shuttle Discovery made her the first female space shuttle pilot. For this, she was awarded the Harmon Trophy as the world's outstanding aviatrix. In 1984, she made her second flight as pilot during mission STS-84, and in July 1999, Collins made history again as the first female mission commander on the STS-93 flight to deliver the Chandra X-ray Observatory to orbit. When NASA prepared to return the space shuttle to flight status after the February 2003 Columbia accident, they selected Collins to command the mission, flying Shuttle Discovery on STS-114 in July 2005. During this flight, she flew the orbiter on a 360-degree pitch maneuver to allow inspection of the thermal tiles on the underside by the crew on the space station, the first time this had ever been done. Collins retired from NASA in 2006 and continues to work as an aerospace consultant, corporate and nonprofit board member, and public speaker. She has received numerous awards and honors, including several honorary doctorates and the 2006 National Space Trophy. We are pleased to induct Eileen Collins into the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by congratulating the other inductees, Mr. George Abbey, Usto Schultz, and Tyson Weiss. It's great to be among this group. And I also want to thank the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame very much for this recognition. And I accept this recognition not really as an individual, but as an example of the great things that anyone can achieve here in the United States of America. I was a child from very humble beginnings. I grew up in a lower middle class family, and we had plenty of struggles, financial and otherwise. But I'm an example of how a person can aspire and work hard and achieve a dream. For me, it began with my love of math and science, and then aviation, and especially exploration. And that gave me the drive to seek out a career of high aspirations. So my timing was that I was eligible to apply to be one of the first women pilots in the United States Air Force. And I was fortunate enough to be in the first class of women to graduate from Vance Air Force Base in Oklahoma. And that was 1978. And then my timing worked out that I was only the second woman pilot to graduate from the Air Force Test Pilot School, and that was 1990. And then I had the opportunity to be the first woman pilot and commander of a space shuttle, and that was in 1995 and 1999. So now these opportunities are open to young women throughout the country, and in fact, throughout the world. And I'm here to say, you can do it. So don't cut yourself short. I can definitely say that these opportunities were there, not because I waited for them to come to me, but because I believed it was possible to achieve them. And I worked hard and I focused. And I always made sure that I was focused on the mission of the organization that I was a member of at the time. And looking back to my past, I think back to when I was a teenager and how I was really inspired by books. And I read every book that I could find on aviation. And back in those days, you pretty much went to the library to find your books. And some of the ones that I read that have very romantic titles were Fate is the Hunter, God is My Co-Pilot, and The Stars at Noon. And by reading these books, I came to learn about these aviation explorers and what made them tick. So some of the ones that stick out in my mind are Bessie Coleman. And I want to mention Bessie Coleman. I know that she's also an inductee in the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame. But if you look at her history, it was almost 100 years ago. She tried to get her pilot's license here in the United States. But as a young Black woman, she was having trouble finding someone who would teach her how to fly and get her certified. So she had to go overseas. In fact, she went to France to get her license, came back to the United States. And I mean, did she ever realize what a great role model she would be 100 years later? And believe it or not, she was a role model to me because I was afraid. I had my nervousness, I want to say, to make that phone call to the fixed base operator in my hometown and say, you know, I'm a 19-year-old young woman and I want to learn how to fly. I was afraid they were going to tell me no. And it was reading about people like Bessie Coleman, early pilots, realizing that she did what she did. Well, you know, maybe I can do that too. So this is why I think it's so important that we record the history of aviators, you know, through, you know, all the way back to the beginning. Some of the other people that inspired me are Jackie Cochran and Nancy Love. And those were two women pilots that started the Women Air Force Service Pilots back during World War II. I also want to mention the Mercury 13 women. So They were 13 women who were highly experienced. They were great pilots, but they were chosen to go through the same medical and physiological testing that the Mercury 7 astronauts went through back in 1960. And they did very well. They passed the test, and they proved that women had the physiological and the mental abilities to fly in space. And so these are women, I stand on their shoulders. I also want to mention military pilots of all kinds, from World War I all the way to the Vietnam War, that I read about back in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. And these were men mostly, but these men inspired me to want to serve my country, learning about all the, the brave things that they did. And even those that were POWs, men like Lance Saigon, who as a POW had the courage and the ability to escape his captors. And finally, I want to mention NASA's Gemini astronauts. They were the first astronauts that I read about. I remember I was in 4th grade, and I decided that I wanted to be just like them. I wanted to go higher, faster, and farther than anyone else before me. And that's what motivated me. So today, I want to say that I'm still motivated by, today and, 2020, 2021, the desire to test new technologies and explore new worlds. This still motivates me to study, to travel, and to push my own limits even today. So I hope that my career can inspire young people to choose aviation, both military and civilian, as well as careers in space exploration. I also encourage young people to choose STEM degrees in college. Today most careers rely on some type of technology or skill, and these skills are ever changing. And finally, I want to mention the importance of museums. Museums are important for recording history. And today's museums represent the past, the present, and also the future. And I want to commend the Lone Star Flight Museum for their educational programs that are today and will continue to inspire young people to choose careers in aviation and space. So thank you for recognizing me. And again, I believe this recognition is something that I represent for aviation, for space exploration, and for inspiring future explorers. I hope to plan to visit again someday in person, sometime in the near future. Thank you.
Born in Marion, Texas in 1921, Usto Schultz graduated from high school in Seguin. Initially conscripted into the Army in 1943 as part of the Signal Corps, he volunteered for flight training and was sent to Oklahoma City for primary instruction. He earned his wings in 1944 as a multi-engine pilot and was assigned to Hondo Army Airfield, Texas, as an engineering officer. There, he oversaw the maintenance and flew the trainer aircraft used for instructing student navigators. For his next assignment, Schultz was to fly combat in the South Pacific, but en route his orders were changed, sending him to Ladd Field in Fairbanks, Alaska, to be part of the cold weather test detachment. While at Ladd, he flew cold weather tests on all of the Army Air Force's twin-engine aircraft, as well as the B-17, C-54, and Sikorsky R-4 helicopter. In 1947, Schultz left the Air Force and spent the next 10 years flying as a commercial pilot for Arctic Pacific Air and Hawaiian Alaska Airlines, flying throughout Alaska. Next, he joined the Civil Aviation Authority, the forerunner of today's FAA, as an air carrier inspector. He transferred to the Washington, D.C. office in 1964, where he rose to be the executive officer of Flight Standards Service. There, he oversaw the checking of navigation facilities, examination of air traffic controller responsibilities, and worked on several investigations of near in-flight accidents, where he made numerous recommendations to improve flight safety. Taking an early retirement from government service in 1975, Schultz became a consultant to the aviation industry, helping airlines to meet FAA air carrier certification standards. Beginning in 1992, Schultz began working with entrepreneur David Neilman of Morris Airlines to help them gain certification for their charter operations. While with Morris, he became involved in converting the airline from paper operations to use of computers for manuals, revisions, updates, and ticketing. In 1998, 5 years after Morris Air was sold to Southwest Airlines, Schultz was again called upon by Neilman to assist with the creation of a new airline JetBlue Airways. In addition to certification, Schultz assisted with aircraft selection and purchasing, development of training programs, and the creation of a corporate culture centered around safety, integrity, caring, passion, and fun. He truly was a founding father of the airline, and because of his contributions, JetBlue named one of its A320 airliners in his honor. He retired as JetBlue's Vice President of Safety in 2005 at the age of 84. We are proud to induct Usto Schultz into the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame.
Last year, we were able to tell Usto Schultz that he had been inducted into the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame and to show him his Hall of Fame display. He was excited and honored to be part of this year's class. Sadly, Usto Schultz passed away in May of last year. I know if he were here, he would be telling you today how thrilled and honored he is to be a member of the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame.
The son of immigrant parents, Tyson Weiss learned early on about the value of hard work in his family's restaurants. Born in South Carolina in 1974, he came to Texas to attend Trinity University in San Antonio. After receiving a BS in computer science and another in accounting and finance, Weiss founded the company Attention and later went on to become the software development director for BenefitFocus.com before returning to school to earn his MBA from Rice University in Houston. In 2006, he became a partner in Houston Ventures, which invested in technology companies focused on energy information technology. It was during this time that Weiss, who was already an instrument-rated pilot, started working on developing software for the general aviation industry. He met Jason Miller, another software developer with a similar product online, and they merged their efforts just before the release of the first iPhones. Focusing on that platform, the duo brought on a third partner, Adam Houghton, to form ForeFlight in 2007 and proceeded to take the aviation world by storm. Their app, which allowed pilots to track their position, call up airport information, and get updated weather information while in flight, quickly began to replace the pilot's bag full of charts and cut the amount of paperwork pilots had to handle on a regular basis. With the introduction of the iPad in 2010, Weiss's software reached new heights in versatility and user-friendliness. Soon, ForeFlight's app migrated from the general aviation world to corporate aviation, flight schools, the military, and the airlines. By helping pilots with increased situational awareness while cutting the workload, the app made great increases in flight safety. It is considered one of the biggest technological innovations since GPS was certified for aircraft. At the same time, Houston-based ForeFlight increased its workforce from just a dozen people in 2010 to over 180, with additional offices in Austin, Portland, Maine, and Odense, Denmark. In 2016, ForeFlight partnered with aviation charting company Jeppesen to expand its commercial aviation presence. And in March 2019, ForeFlight was acquired by Boeing. As CEO, Weiss and his Texas entrepreneurial spirit continue to lead ForeFlight into a bright and promising future. We are pleased to induct Tyson Weiss into the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame.
Hello everyone. I wanted to start off by saying to those that nominated us for this great award, thank you so much. That alone is really special. But to receive word that we're being inducted into this great Texas institution is truly something remarkable. I know that when we started the company 14 years ago in 2007 over our garages in Houston, Texas, and my partner, co-founder Jason Miller's garage over his house in Williamsburg, Virginia, we could not have imagined the adventure that we would go on. We couldn't have written a business plan that outlined all the things that we would experience or do or the impact that we have been able to make in aviation. But it's truly been an amazing journey and something that we will always remember fondly. The impact that the ForeFlight team and the software that we have built over the past 14 years is truly remarkable. We have been able to impact the lives of aviators around the world, everyone from a student pilot having their first flight to a young child able to interact with the software and learn about aviation, to supporting the missions of so many, not only in Texas, but in governments and militaries in the United States and around the world. Starting with NASA here in Houston, one of our early customers, to supporting agencies like the Texas Department of Public Safety. It's been a real pleasure to see these customers use and enjoy and really come to benefit from the things that the ForeFlight team has built. So to the ForeFlight team, thank you. This award is for all of us who have created such an impact on aviation, really transformed the way the pilots fly every day. To our family members who have supported us through this amazing time and this journey, building a company that started with 2 and now employs over 260, the bulk of which are in Houston and Austin, Texas. To our mentors and those that have supported us along the way and encouraged us and provided their advice and counsel. We are truly honored to be part of the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame, to continue to make such an impact on aviators around the world, inspire people to fly, to make flying safer and easier for everyone. Again, thank you. It's truly an honor to become part of this great Texas institution.
What a remarkable group, and now official members of the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame. Congratulations to each of the new members, and thank you to George, Eileen, and Tyson for including their own personal sentiments in this program. While this ceremony is a bit unconventional, it is no less significant to all of us here at the museum and an important part of celebrating and recognizing Texas's role in aviation and those that have been and continue to be part of it. As we conclude this event, you will see a tour of the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame. But I invite each of you to visit the Lone Star Flight Museum in person and experience our aircraft, galleries, and especially the Hall of Fame. Once again, congratulations to our inductees. Thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing all of you next year in person at the 2022 Texas Aviation Hall of Fame ceremony.